Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Smári. In this one we will learn all about pins. What is a pin? A pin is when a piece is held in place or pinned by an enemy piece. The pinned piece cannot leave the line of attack. And what do I mean by line? Well, there are three types of lines on the chessboard. Those are files, ranks, and diagonals. This is something that we learned in a previous video, by the way. Line pieces can pin. Bishops, rooks, and queens are called line pieces since they move along lines. Line pieces are the ones that can pin enemy pieces. Three pieces on a line. When a piece is pinned, it cannot leave the line of attack because it is shielding a more valuable piece that's behind it. So the attacking piece, the pinned piece, and the more valuable piece behind it are all on the same line. And this is what I mean when I say more valuable. The king is the most valuable piece, then comes the queen, then rook, bishop and knight equal, and the pawn is the least valuable piece. When you do a pin, the pinned piece will always be shielding a more valuable piece. Pins can be either absolute or relative. Let's start with the absolute. If the pinned piece is shielding the king, then the pin is absolute. The pinned piece can absolutely not leave the line of attack. In this example, the black bishop is pinning the white rook. The rook cannot move because that would leave the king in check. And as we know, the king can never be left in check. The red arrow shows the line of attack. And now the relative pin. A relative pin is when the pinned piece is shielding a piece other than the king. It is allowed to move out of the way, but it's just not going to be a good idea to do it. Here the black rook is pinning the white bishop. What happens if the bishop moves? We'll come back to that in a few moments. Now let's see some pins in action. So here we have an absolute pin. The black rook is pinning the white knight, and the white knight is shielding the white king on g2. That means that the white knight cannot move at all. So all white can do is move the king somewhere, and then black can just take that knight. And now our relative pin. So I asked, what happens if the bishop moves? And the answer is, if the bishop moves, then the black rook will come all the way down and take that queen, like this. It's almost checkmate, by the way, but not quite, because white can block. But white just lost a whole queen for nothing. That's what this relative pin was about. Your bishop can move, but it shouldn't. If you move the bishop, you lose the queen. A better idea for white would be, for example, to step out of the pin like this and then just continue the game. And then white is still winning. Okay, now let's do some exercises where your mission is to find the pin. In this position, white to move, how would you do a pin for white? The answer is bishop h3. This pins the rook, which cannot move, and when black moves the king, white can take the rook. So king c7, for example, bishop takes f5, and we got the rook for free. Exercise 2, white to move. Black has two pieces on the same line. That line is the e file. So we have a line piece which is the rook, and that rook can also go to the e file like this. This pins the bishop and this wins the bishop. We sometimes say in chess, winning by pinning. And that's certainly the case here. We will win the bishop and then we have a winning position. So black has to move the king. It's the only piece he can move. And then we just take the bishop. Exercise 3, black to move. Do a queen pin. White has two pieces on the same line. That line is the first rank. Can the black queen go to a good square on that first rank? Yes, she can go to a1. This pins the knight, and when white moves the king, we can just take the knight. Exercise 4. Black to move again and do another queen pin. Do you see any white pieces that are on the same line? So white has the king and the bishop both on the g file, and the queen can also go to the g file and pin the bishop. That's why the move is queen g7. So white cannot save the bishop anymore here. The bishop cannot move because that would leave the king in check. White can move the d pawn or the king, but in both cases black of course just takes the bishop. And exercise 5, white to move. Which piece will white move? It is the bishop that can do a really good pin here. What will the bishop pin? And the answer is white plays bishop b3. Now this bishop has pinned the black queen, and white will win the black queen. So winning by pinning once again. Notice how the black queen cannot take the white queen. So like this is not possible because that would leave the black king in check. So you can't do this, which is what black would probably want to do but isn't allowed to. If black takes the bishop, then of course white comes over and just takes the queen. And so whatever black does will always win the queen. Black can actually move the queen to a couple of squares, b3, d5 and e6, but in all cases white will always get the queen. But when the pinned piece can still move along the line of attack, then that's called a partial pin. And because queens are so strong, they can only be pinned partially. It means that they can still move along the line, unlike our previous examples. So let's get now to our last example. White to move and do a rook pin. It'll be an absolute pin. And does black have any pieces that are on the same line? And the answer is black has a king and a bishop that are both on the 7th rank. We have one line piece, which is the rook, and this rook can now go to the 7th rank also. So like this, rook g7. This pins the black bishop. This will also win the bishop. Notice how the white knight is also attacking the bishop like this, and black only has one defender of that bishop, which is the king. And so it's 2 against 1. 2 attackers, 1 defender, and this is why the bishop will fall. Black doesn't have any more pieces to defend the bishop with. So black can move the pawn or black can move the king, but in both cases we can now just take the bishop. So winning by pinning once again. Now pins are among the most common tactics in chess, so look out for them when you're playing your own games. And pins, like other tactics, often work together with other tactics. So for example, if you have a pin, that might allow you to do a fork, for example, and so forth. But this is, this was my lesson about pins. I hope you liked it, and I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.